Okay, let's continue the next concept, dynamic instruction scheduling. Okay, you can expect one question from this topic of the discussion. Okay, so in the previous concepts we have studied the instructions scheduling in static method. So static method means one was a prefetch buffers, another one was multiple functional units, and internal data forwarding, and last one was hazard avoidance. Okay, so now we are working on dynamic basis. Okay, so here scheduling means there will be a pipeline with many stages. There will be bunch of instructions, so we have to send the instructions in some order so that they will pass through this pipeline to get output. So this is what our purpose. Okay, now this scheduling of many instructions we are doing dynamic in the sense based upon the scenario we have to decide. Okay, now scheduling of instructions, what we are doing is okay, so the scheduling what we are doing is mainly to supply them into the pipeline system. So in that we have as I mentioned static scheduling, and another one is dynamic scheduling. Okay, so static scheduling, yesterday in the last class we discussed, as I mentioned, there were 4 points or 4 types. So they all concentrated on reducing a compiler workload. The main focus of static scheduling was to reduce workload on the compiler, but the dynamic is not like reducing a compiler. It is to achieve best efficiency, highest efficiency. So that is a motto. Okay, it is not like reducing work on compiler or something. So why they are opting this method is, since compiler is a program, so why to worry about its workload and all. Okay, so let us make a compiler strong as well as efficiency also strong. To perform this we have Tomasulo's register tagging method. The method is Tomasulo's is a algorithm. So third method what we have is scoreboarding technique. For that case study we have is CDC 6600 processor as a example. Okay, now we have static scheduling. In that static scheduling, okay, so we will make a relation between each and every instruction. We will make a relation between each and every instruction, and because of that we call such a situation as data dependency. That means one instruction output, let me write output 1, which we have got by execution of input 1. Okay, so the output 1 is acts as input 2. That means what? To generate output 2, we have to wait for output 2 till output 1 completes execution. Why? Because output 1 itself is input 2, hence we can say it is a data dependent. So if there is a data dependent between multiple instructions, the situation is called as interlocking. In such situation we have to perform different methods so that we can remove or resolve the data dependency and make them to execute faster in the sense in order only. It is not like all together at a time, one after another, but in less amount of time. Okay, fine. Okay, so one of the example we have Please concentrate here. This is the original program. Okay, so add R0 and R1, store the result in R0, move whatever value in R5 to R1. Okay, R5 to R1, and take a data from memory identified by alphabet, load or keep on R2, take data from beta location and keep it in R3. Finally perform R2 with R3 multiplication and store result in R3. You can read the comments here, okay, for your analysis purpose. Now what happening, see here, the concentration is in the multiplication. So when we can start multiplication is when R3 loading is success, also R2 loading is success. If these two load success, then only we can continue multiplication. So what we can do is, let's go for rearrangement or new arrangement. See the arrangement. What we have is, we kept multiplication in the last only. Multiplication is last only, but instead of load as third and fourth instruction, what we made is third and fourth instructions are placed in the position of 1 and 2, and third and fourth instructions, earlier it were first and second, now they are changed to third and fourth. Why we did this is, hope you can imagine. See, multiply is dependent on R2, R3. So if we execute in given order itself, what happens? Add is independent, move is independent, so they will execute. Okay, like this. I hope you remember this type of architecture. Okay, even load is also I think I will write here, add, then comes move, then comes load first, load second. See, until load second finishes, we cannot start multiplication. We cannot start multiplication here. So what is a problem with this is, here I am explaining, load we cannot start. So what we did, the change is, first load, second load, third add, next move. So by this end of move, or also we call it as start of multiplication, both loads are completed. You can see here, last point is completed. So what it indicates, it never suffers any delay here, unwanted delay here. But what happened here, see, load is not, until load is completed, we cannot start. Even if we start, we will get a wait in the sense idle time. So to avoid that situation, what we are doing is, first dependent loads, then independent instructions, then dependent multiplications. So this is called as rearrangement. Actually we have studied this in our last discussion. Anyway, it is also kind of dynamic instructions arrangement. It is called as instructions arrangement method of execution. Okay, so let's take next. Second method is, this is algorithm. Please remember steps as it is. Okay, as it is. Tomasulo's algorithm. The name of algorithm is Tomasulo's algorithm. Okay, fine. So through this, I think we discussed yesterday this program, taking a data from Y, taking data from Z, loading on to separate R1 and R2. Whatever the value R1, R2, perform addition, store it in R3. Sorry, keep it in R3. Whatever is value R3, that we have to store in the memory in the position of X. I think we have discussed Y position, Z position, X position. Here if you assume 2, and if I assume 3 here, this is 2. From the position of Y, take on to R1. From the position of Z, take on to R2, get a result called phi, and keep it in the position of X. Similarly for another set, what is that? Memory B, memory C. Okay, here I will draw this. So this is B and this is a C position, and A is a where we have to store a result. Okay, next. So let us take a value 5 and 4. The answer is 20. Okay, take it on R, I think R1, and R2 for C, R3. Repeated usage of R1, R2. Okay, now yesterday I explained, since these two are independent, they directly get execute. Okay, now memory, the instruction, next instruction is R1 plus R2. It is dependent on previous instruction, so we have to wait till W of second instruction completes. So by end of this we will get a result. Okay, so till that instruction finishes we cannot go for a store purpose, so we have to finish store only when we will complete the previous instruction. Similar explanation for the next also. Okay, here the concept is what are the steps to be followed to perform pipelining using Tomasulo's algorithm. If issued instructions operands not yet available, it should be forwarded to an reservation station. Okay, in the I hope you all remember a diagram. There will be functional unit and there will be reservation station. Functional unit and reservation table. Like this, there will be one circuit. Those all are identified by a tag and they are kept in a tag unit. Okay, yesterday's diagram, please recall it. Okay, like this, there will be some set of functional units and reservation stations. Okay, so now comes each. If the data is data means I want to perform plus, but data of both is not yet available. That time keep that instruction plus in the reservation station. Okay, so every reservation station will be available here. Every functional unit is associated with one reservation table or station. Okay, next, the instruction waits till its data dependency resolved. Resolved means what? Where the data was engaged, that should be made free and make it available for present execution. Say hope we wanted to execute 2 plus 3. Assume 2 is busy with some other work. 3 is available, but 2 is not yet available. So we cannot finish the work 2 plus 3 unless 2, the value data 2 is also available. So if the data is not available, that means data dependency. It is dependent on somebody else. So till that data dependency resolved, wait. Okay. So then when all the data of instruction is available, then only forward it to functional unit. Otherwise what happens? If all data is available, forward it to functional unit here. If not, again keep it in the reservation station for a long time. If source register is busy, then for source register forward it to the destination. Source means what? Here it is. Y is a source. Here R2 is a source or R1 is a source. Okay. If these are busy, again keep it in the reservation station only. When complete data is available, then only functional unit completes the execution. Otherwise functional unit keeps every instruction whose data is not available or whose source register is not available, they will be kept in the reservation station for long time till the data becomes available. Okay, so the next one we have is third method. I think I have cleared two. One is dynamic through Tomasulo's register tagging method. First one is static scheduling. Here we have studied reorder. Reorder means change the orders. Here I forgot to give. Okay, I think I discussed static scheduling also. Okay, next dynamic Tomazolo's algorithm. Third one is CDC scoreboarding. I think they will ask a question either on Tomazolo's algorithm or on the CDC scoreboarding. Okay, so what do you mean by CDC scoreboarding technique? There will be instruction fetch, decode, issue. Okay, and since there are multiple staged multiple or n number of stages of pipeline, and each stage consisting of multiple executions. Okay, hope you can see now. See this, I have colored with three different here, three stages, first color, second color and third color. If you take one color, again we have multiple executions and write back. So see the method. Scoreboarding means there will be one common scoreboard which maintains information about each pipeline's status. Okay, what is which instruction is executing, what is the status, whether they are in a wait state, run state or execution or abort state, etc. These all are the possible information what we can store in the scoreboard. Okay, see now, as I mentioned, there may be multiple functional units, and in each unit multiple execution. Okay, so is it allowed to execute instructions parallelly? Yes, it is, because what we have is a different state. First stage is different, second stage is different, and third stage is different. Like that we have n stages also. There is no rule that always we should have only 3. See, this is an extended version. Now we have one feature called instruction buffer for the purpose of storing instruction temporarily. Because what is buffer? Temporary storage. What we have to store is instruction, and for each functional unit we are associated with instruction buffer, and inside each instruction buffer, instruction waits till the data becomes available. Okay, once data is available, then it enters the pipeline. Otherwise it will be kept in the instruction buffer waiting situation means till data becomes available. To perform all this, we have a centralized control unit called scoreboard. So what the central scoreboard maintains is about the status of the registers, whether status of a register like data available, data not available. Okay, data updated, data is corrupt. Like that, different status will be maintained, and also it will maintain a status of functional unit. It is like wait state, execution completed, under execution, abort, etc. These all are the possible outcomes in which functional unit can be present. So also it maintains report about a data dependency. Why it is? Let's see. Okay, see here. If one instruction is under execution of this, and another instruction is in the parallelly trying to get execute, unknowingly this second pipeline wants to get a data from first. That is called as data dependency. That time instruction 2 pipeline should wait till instruction 1 write back completes. Okay, this is what is called data. The central board should have report about such a dependencies also. If there are dependencies, it should highlight, so that pipeline 2 keeps waiting for completion of pipeline 1, and also it should have information about degree of parallelism. Okay, so next, branch handling techniques. Okay, this is also one of the important concept here. Okay, so branch handling means here let me draw one of the case. See, I have wrote some C program. Somewhere I have called one UDF, user defined function. So after that I have wrote a continuously C program. So what happens? Execution, how? First line, second line, third line, okay, it continues. Once UDF comes, it will jumps for the definition which I have wrote outside and after the main function. This is called as main function. Here I have written UDF definition. So here will be UDF lines, user defined functions. Okay, now once this line starts execution, we used to say simple words like control shifts from main to the subroutine and it starts executing. But here in this chapter we are going to study what all the things will happen whenever we say control shift from main to subroutine. Okay, so let's see one by one. What happens when we have we got a situation of branching. The word branching means what? Shift from main to the subroutine or from one function to any other function which are not continuous. That is called as branching activity. Okay, there are three definitions: branch taken, branch target, delay slot. What do you mean by branch taken? From main to subroutine, control gets shifted, and this activity is called as branch taken. Branch taken. So what do you mean by branch target? It's a value in the memory location called a destination from where instructions gets executes with condition of what? Once branch is taken. Okay, I will try to give some analysis. I have wrote a C program here. Okay, and after this I have wrote one UDF. So somewhere in the middle of this C program, that is main, UDF is called. UDF is called. So find out the address of this. This is called as destination. That destination is identified by here as branch target. Okay, delay slot. Please remember the definition. Number of CPU cycles wasted between branch taken and instruction fetch. See, here we have to measure the time in terms of CPU cycles from taken till the target. See, this time we have to calculate how much time it is. That is called as delay slot. Okay. Okay, so now we have one small derivation. Effect of branching. So how the branching affects the performance or throughput. So let P be the probability of conditional branch. So that means what? Out of 10 instructions what I have wrote in a C program, okay, let me assume a case like this. 10 lines I have wrote in the main function and 5 lines I have wrote in the UDF. So this is what I assume. So out of 10, which line is decides to jump from main to subroutine, and how many such are there? Let me take only one line. There is only one line which will decides to going to UDF or not. Okay, so what is the probability? 1 out of 10. That means what? 0.1. If I have 3 or 4, then it becomes 0.3, 0.4 like that. Next, Q. Q is also probability. I forgot to include the word probability. Successful execution of branch instruction. That means what? How much assure we can give that once a branch is taken, it will definitely execute this part. Hope it will be almost 0.9. Why I am giving 0.9 or 0.99 is, if branch is taken, definitely branch instruction will execute. So I am taking it as 0.99. We should not take 1 because a maximum probability is 100%. Okay. So how many number of stages in the pipeline are K? Each slot of the pipeline suffers a delay of B. Number of tasks, as I mentioned, N. So standard clock cycle to measure is tau. So here I hope you all remember one equation, that is T of K that is time taken to complete n tasks through k staged pipeline is equal to bracket of k number of stages, okay, plus 1 lesser than number of total instructions and tau number of times. This is a formula. This was the formula. So the same formula is going to add with the, see now, expand this, k into tau first term plus n minus 1 into tau, that is second term. See, this is how I have got this equation. Please refer earlier videos. Okay. So now this is a new part of the equation. P into q into n into b into tau. P means probability of being a branch instruction. Q is probability of successful execution once a branch is taken. N is number of tasks, because how many tasks are here after the branching decision is done. B is the delay. Tau is a standard measurement. So here total efficiency is given by k into tau plus n minus 1 into tau plus pq into n into b into tau. So throughput can be given as what? H efficiency is equal to total number of tasks divided by time of efficiency. Okay. So how we can give time of efficiency? This is what numerator. Okay. So if we don't want to mention with the help of tau, take a tau common. Okay. So we the tau is equal to 1 by f. Tau is equal to 1 by f. That time what happens? Here I will get f, and this f I will transfer into the numerator. Hence I will get there as n into f, number of tasks into frequency, whole divided by k plus bracket of n minus 1 plus pqnb. Please remember, there is no tau, because tau itself we have used to represent frequency. Okay. As n tends to infinity, see here also infinity, and numerator also k plus infinity in plus this extra term. What is branching term? So what happens? Numerator will be smaller than denominator. So what we can expect? It will be in the range of 0.1 to 0.9, because definitely numerator is smaller than denominator. Okay. Next, one of the problem we have, let me solve here only. Okay. If p and q both are 0, what happens? See, as n tends to infinity, we have formula H efficiency is equal to frequency divided by pq into k minus 1 plus 1. Okay. So what happens? Pq 0 0. Okay. If it is a 0 0, f divided by 1. If it is f divided by 1, it is equal to tau. That means maximum output. Okay. Second example, if branching probability is 2 and execution probability is 0.6 and there are 8 stages, pq into k minus 1 whole divided by pq into k minus 1 plus 1. Okay. So what is p? 0.2, q is 0.6, k minus 1 is 8 minus 1, 7. So denominator part 0.2 into 0.6 into 7 whole bracket plus 1. So what we will get? 0.84 divided by 1.84. So 0.84 divided by 1.84, which will be almost 0.46. If you convert into efficiency, it will be 46% of efficiency. Okay. Now next concept is how to predict the branch, whether the instruction is going to be a branch type, results into existence of branch or not branch. If it is a branch, jump and execute. If it is not a branch, it is a sequential execution. So now it is prediction based. So to predict the branch, possible branch, we have to maintain one data structure which maintains 3 information. It is a branch direction, whether it is going upward or downward. Hope you all remember in your system software the program read record and write record. Okay, based on that, whether it is a forward jump or the backward jump. Jump means branch. So second one is where to jump, First one is direction to the jump, second one is where to jump, third one is once the jump is success, which instruction should execute, sorry, not execute, which instruction should fetch. That these all three information are very compulsory to predict the branch. Okay. So here one method we have, the last one is delayed branch. Okay. So delayed branch means what? Unnecessarily waste of CPU cycles, okay, between a branch activity. If we club all such delays, what the sum total sum we will get, and we call it as branch penalty. Penalty means waste of resources. What is the reason to make resources waste here is branch prediction. So total activity is branch penalty. See now what how we can analyze this is, there is one C program and there is one UDF, sorry, two UDF. Okay, so line number 5th will call this UDF and line number 7th will call this UDF. Now generally what we used to say is line 1 executes 2, 3, 4. When it is a 5th, it is a decider whether it should go for 6th line or should it go for UDF. So this is a decider. If we take lot of time to decide, then definitely the time taken to execute this complete program will be more. So this now that whatever is the time taken, that is called as branch penalty, because here we are not able to decide in a short time or a very less time whether it is a UDF execution or a 6th line execution. So if we try to reduce this delay as much as possible, we can reduce branch penalty. So branch penalty is directly proportional to delay in the every slot. Okay, so in a different architecture they have drawn, the author has given us different analysis how the individual instruction suffers a delay. Okay, here delayed branch you can measure here, delayed branch where it occurred between the time of 4 to 8, between the time of 4 to 8. Okay, so here it is continuous execution in the both of the cases where we will get a delay, so that we have to identify. Okay, so now okay, see as I mentioned, a delayed branch of total D cycles allows maximum D minus 1 useful instructions, because already first instruction is executed. So what we left with? We left with 1 minus of total instructions. So if I assume one instruction, one cycle, so it will take D minus 1 CPU cycles. Okay, so next one is making instructions data independent. So by making this data independent, we can try to achieve zero branch penalty. So that means what? Here instead of writing it as a UDF, write inside the program itself. Instead of writing separate UDF, try to include in the main program itself. It is actually good with respect to branch penalty, but it is not best method with respect to space complexity. Space complexity means the program keeps enhanced. Total number of memory will be very high whenever we load onto the machine or the RAM. It will take a lot of time. So generally what is the advantage of writing UDF? So every time UDF, write once, call many a times. Write once and call n times. With what? Different parameters. Okay, so we will get a result every time. But here definitely there will be a branch penalty. If we concentrate more on branch penalty, to get a zero branch penalty, we have to include, instead of UDF writing outside, we have to write inside the main program itself, but that increases space complexity. Okay, so based on this we have to manage in the sense there should not be more space occupied by the program, and also there should not be more branch penalty. So we have to make balance between branch penalty, which is inversely proportional with space. If you branch penalty is inversely proportional to space complexity. If you try to work on space complexity so that program takes less time, branch penalty keeps more. If you work more on branch penalty, like making branch penalty lesser, space complexity will be more. So we have to maintain some sufficient ratio. Okay, thank you.